This is what we do to get the most amount of sleep for our kids and family. This is our natural sleep remedies. I've got a list of 7 of them. I don't really see them necessarily as separate, like one is better than the other. We really deploy these and always have for our kiddos and always have had good sleep, good neurological health. This stuff really works. Welcome to the Experience Miracles podcast, where we help parents find hope, answers, and drug-free help to overcome your child's chronic health challenges. I'm your host, Dr. Tony Ebel, and I'll be sharing my experiences as both a dad and a doctor on every episode. I can take the latest science and neurology of healing and break it down in the most simple and relatable way possible. We'll take on the toughest topics and answer your biggest questions through interviews with other amazing parents and leading experts, leaving you with practical action steps that you can take to help your child heal and thrive. It's time to expect and experience miracles. Let's get started. All right, parents, here we go. Another episode of the Experience Miracles podcast. Are you tired out there? You know, talking about this job that we do, the best job in the world, parenting. Definitely not the easiest job. And you know, the one thing at the end of the day that we want so badly for ourselves is sleep. The magic freaking elixir of all ills, word, thing, whatever it is. Sleep is the most magical, wonderful. When you get it, your whole life changes. We're actually going to talk about the neuroscientific benefits of sleep. We're going to talk about why kids and others struggle to sleep. We're going to talk all about sleep, but let's just be real about sleep coming out of this one. It really is that awesome, isn't it? Like, it's really a game changer. I know game changer is probably an overused word, but I think we can go ahead and let sleep have the use of that term, because sleep is essential for everyone's health. But I'm actually talking about us parents and our lack of sleep and our chronic fatigue and all of our health issues that come from it. And what we like to say is most parents today are wound up and worn out. But our problems with sleep not only likely stem from what we're going to talk about today, our own nervous system dysregulation, dysfunction, our adrenals are all out of sorts, our gut's a mess. Like, we'll talk about today's neuroscientific conversation around sleep, and we can apply it to ourselves. But we don't get to go to bed first, do we? See, real life as a parent is, even if your sleep, your nervous system regulation is pretty dialed in, and if allowed to go to bed on time, it's kind of funny, right? Like, if you were parenting yourself, you would. Isn't that the conundrum, one of many, of parenting? You want nothing more than to take a nap. You want nothing more than to go to bed at 7:30 p.m. You wouldn't even mind if you didn't get a snack and a glass of water and had somebody read you 3 books. In fact, you'd like to just skip it all. You don't want to brush your teeth. You don't want to have a healthy snack. You don't want to take your magnesium. You don't want to take your melatonin. You don't want to make sure that your Tempur-Pedic bed is at 68 degrees and it's just right, and your white noise machine is on, and your diffuser is pumping lavender, and whatever your sleep habits are. That's also kind of funny / not funny. Kicking off with this one. Have you ever noticed this? I saw, I forget the comedian's name now, but he's on Instagram, pretty popular guy that goes viral on Instagram. And he did this reel from sitting in the airport, and he had just overheard this lady talking about, all these different things she does to get a good night's sleep. And the real ticket is to do some rubbing magnesium on the soles of her feet before she goes to bed. And he just made this funny joke that, again, it's kind of funny, not funny. It's like, since when, if sleep is so unbelievably important to all of our well-being, why do we put so much stress and pressure on ourselves to sleep? It's one of those things that we know all about how important it is. But again, as a parent, you're really up against it, because you've got to get your kids to bed first in order to then get everything done you want to get done, maybe before you get to bed, get a little quiet time, a little just, not work, not kid, just that kind of free time, we'll call it, for today's conversation. And then you want to get to bed on time. And it'd be nice if your incredible kiddos not only fell asleep easier, but if they actually stayed asleep, stayed in their own bed, and got a full night of sleep. Now, by the way, I snuck that in there, but I'm the biggest fan of co-sleeping. We've done it our whole lives. And again, when you are a parent, you actually don't mind. Everybody's wired differently, so teach their own. But we are absolutely in love with having our kids a huge part of our life, and especially when they were little, co-sleeping was encouraged. But even then, if they don't stay asleep, if they're getting restless, irregular, waking up multiple times in the night sleep, you can see, and I'm done with the introduction now, because so many of you, what I'm painting the picture of is very much real life. Now, even for my 4 kiddos, Addison, first baby up, right? Addison's actually always been a pretty good sleeper when she was little. Now, Addison is a very smart, very driven, very much wants to know everything sort of kiddo. She's brilliant. So as long as we met the demand of reading multiple books in full, Addison was just one of those kiddos. She could just read right out of the gates. Like, it was wild how much she just picked up reading. In fact, every parent does this, so I'm just sneaking this in. When we would try and like skip a page, she would notice it. She'd be like, no, clown, back up. I'm not going in that crib. I'm not going to bed. I'm not going in there and I'm falling asleep until you finish this book all the way through. So then you try and cheat the system a little bit and you're like, well, I'll just skip a word or two. I mean, my oldest daughter is so dialed in that when I would read her a book as like a 2 or 3-year-old, if I skipped an article, not to take you back to high school English class, but if I skipped like the word the or and just kind of sped read a little bit, she'd call me out on it, and I would have to go back to the beginning. Guys, I couldn't even go back to the beginning of the sentence. If you have a firstborn daughter, I think you're relating to this. This is how they're wired, okay? They have high standards for us as parents, okay? And this is just an early exposure of it for that. So Addison would fall asleep after you go through all those things. Now, as a teenager, things are a little bit different, right? So Oliver, toughest kid we had to sleep. Not to throw my one main man under the bus, but Oliver had a traumatic birth. Oliver had an injury to his brainstem. Oliver's nervous system was overstimulated, subluxated, dysregulated. Some things we're going to talk about today that can be a hidden under the hood cause of sleep issues. We're going to talk about a whole bunch of other stuff with gut health and other sort of routines to help sleep. We're going to go full send on today's sleep episode and really give you all sorts of strategies to help your kiddo sleep. But Oliver definitely had a little bit more challenge falling asleep. He spent 6 weeks in the NICU where he couldn't be connected to us. He couldn't co-sleep with us. And so for the first couple years of Oliver's life, he is now making up for this. He's the greatest sleeper in the household right now. But in the beginning, a little bit of challenge. And then the 2 little girls, Elena, always been a great sleeper, pretty much dialed in. That little lady loves her sleep, goes to bed, reads her book, sayonara. And then there's Tiny. Tiny is the most miniature version. You're thinking, is your daughter's name Tiny? Not necessarily. It's Amelia, but everybody in the world knows Tiny as Tiny. And so she is mini me, okay? She is Tiny the talker. I'm Tony the talker. She's a raging bull. I'm a raging bull, okay? And so Tiny is just a very busy little brain. Do you have one of those? Tiny loves to not only read and conversate and do things, but Tiny's nervous system takes a little bit longer to chill. Now, once she gets to sleep, she's a good sleeper. But some of the things, in addition to getting adjusted, now I have that at my disposal. I can calm and regulate my kids' nervous systems with my hands through adjustments. But I don't want that to be the only conversation here today. We are going to go into first, what causes sleep patterns, sleep abilities, sleep functions to be disrupted. We're going to talk about the challenges if your kiddo struggles to fall asleep. We'll talk about why. If they can get to sleep okay, but then they don't stay asleep and they don't get restful, recharging, really wonderful sleep, high quality sleep, we'll call it. We'll talk about that. And if they struggle with both, we'll talk about this. Nothing, honestly, if we really, really lay it out, and I thought about this ahead of recording this one. If we take the core pillars of health, okay? Sleep, movement, nutrition, and then in our world, we would actually lay all of those things and then everything else that could get a little more granular other than these 3 big levers, we would lay them all on the foundation of nervous system regulation and nervous system health, so kind of brain-based health. But sleep, nutrition, movement. If somebody said to me, for your kids' well-being, what would you protect the most? What are you the most kind of hawkish on that you and your wife really protect forever? It's been sleep. We are the family who was never showing up to dinners. We didn't take our kids to the weddings. We didn't really go out and do a ton after 7, 8 o'clock at night, because I know, being a pediatric brain-based neurodevelopmental specialist, that there is nothing more important than sleep. So we have protected bedtimes, we have protected routines for a long time. So if we're saying this, there better be quite a bit in there, right? If you're going to go ahead and let your life, and we had kids early, all right? We had kids in our mid-20s, and so we were that family that, or parents, whatever you want to call it, where our social life, because our life has always been about our kids and it's been about our family. Now, don't feel bad for us. We love life. We do plenty of fun things. But I just wanted to paint that picture to say we really took it to what most people would call the extreme. And I actually want to share the reasons why we did that. I'm being very personal out of this one, but I want to give you the neuroscience behind that personal decision. I always promise you that I'll come at this podcast with both the parent and provider hat, the real life experience and talk you through it the way we see it that way, and then the research and the nerd and the neuroscience experience. And it's actually the latter that dictates a lot of our decisions to the former. Because we know what health promotion and neuroscience and neurodevelopment are really dependent upon, we've set our entire lifestyle up around this, and sleep gets the most amount of protection and importance. Because when you have poor sleep, when your kiddos struggle to sleep, you are going to deal with non-stop behavioral, mood, emotional dysregulation. You're going to have tantrums. You're going to have meltdowns. You're going to have anxiety. Now, nobody needs to be a neuroscience expert to know this. If a toddler, let's say a baby or a 2-year-old, because it's the Christmas party or it's whatever else is going on, and people without kids schedule said party right during the middle of your kid's nap time because they don't have naps with their kids, or their kids are older and that's no longer a thing, right? This is just called life. And if your little one skips their nap, how's your afternoon? How's keeping them settled in during dinner at the restaurant or at the wedding? It's terrible. It's an existence that every parent has been through when your kid is absolutely wiped out tired because they didn't sleep in the hotel or they didn't take their nap, and they have that day tantrums, anxiety. Now, hopefully for most kids, that only occurs during those certain times, nights, days, where their sleep is disrupted. What if sleep is always disrupted? Then you're very likely dealing with tantrums and meltdowns and emotional dysregulation all day, every day. That would be the mental, emotional, behavioral side of things. The other things that come with disrupted sleep are physical challenges. It can actually affect their growth. It massively affects their gut health. It significantly negatively impacts their immune system. See, at sleep, when your kid's not moving on the outside, a whole lot of healing, repair, development, and rebuilding is happening on the inside. Sleep is essential to growth, to digestion, and to immune function. What about cognition? What about brain-based development? Well, sleep is essential to learning, focus, concentration, cognition, all of these sort of things. So what are the benefits to good sleep? And again, this is actually a pretty quick, short list of ripping through these things. What are the benefits of good sleep? All of that bad stuff flipped on its head. You want a child who is really socially, emotionally engaged, balanced, can handle sensory transitions, scheduled transitions, keep their emotions and behavior in check. They need sleep. They need to have a full battery of their brain to be able to do that. So emotional regulation, decision-making, behavior, social interactions, school performance. This is a big one. I am so mystified, and I try and help. I always make the joke that you're in your 40s when you say yes to a board position at your kid's school or other organizations. I don't know if this has happened to you, but you get old and then all of a sudden you're like, am I on 3 boards? Like who's one, how did I get this old? 2, who thinks I'm this professional that they would give me a board of directors seat? Like they must not know, the grown up, like the life I grew. Okay. All right. We'll leave that off the podcast too. You know what I mean? Let's not go down too far down that road. All right. So anyways, when you look at school, I look at it and I go, what are we doing here? Are we literally trying to get more behavior issues, more trouble, more detentions for our kids, more inability to focus, terrible grades? Because we talk about we want our kids to be well-behaved and have, great character. We want them to score well on exams and perform well in sports. Like these are the goals that schools have, right? So they're like, yeah, so let's start it at 7:10, which means you need to get up at 6 o'clock. And then we're going to overload the sports schedule. We're going to overload their homework and their expectations. Again, different schools, different strokes. And then, oh, by the way, we took PE out. Like we're going to make sure they sit in their chair, glued to a Google Chrome or a smartboard. We're going to pump LED lights into this room full of distractions to tick off their already ticked off nervous system. And then just in case their gut-brain connection wasn't disrupted enough, we're going to douse the entire school with toxic chemicals and require them to pump Purell all over their hands. Because even with the perfect storm, we know that kids are chronically sick today, but inside the school here, we'd like to apply so much stress, disrupt their sleep so much and then expose them to as many chemicals through our lunch program, our cleaners, and everything else. We'd like to really disrupt their gut-brain connection and their gut dysbiosis. So the way I just said that, it's probably not written that way in any school's handbook, or what would that be called? Strategic plan. But do most school administrators, decision makers, board of directors know a damn thing about health and neuroscience and brain-based development? Unfortunately, they don't. Because when it comes to sleep, it is essential to school and sports performance, and our school and sports schedule, especially if it's a triple club playing family. What chance do they have to sleep if their final 15th practice of the day starts at 9 o'clock at the rink, and then they're supposed to get up at 6 a.m. because they still have homework and they have tests the next day? Went on a bit of a rant there, but the reason that we have one of the very essential hidden in plain sight reasons we have so many school-based challenges and behavior-based challenges in this world, and then kids get diagnosed with ADHD and then they get medicated, and you know what they need? They don't freaking need Ritalin. They need sleep. They need a chance to have their nervous system regulated and connected. And I know I'm preaching and teaching to the choir, and a bunch of you rock stars had enough with the traditional school system, and you're maybe not as obstinate as me to try to get in there and buck the system and change some things around. And so you homeschool your kiddos, and if so, and if not, I love y'all, and you're all amazing, and you're all awesome, and you're all doing everything you can to protect this, right? To protect our kids' health. Well, sleep is a conversation that I want you to own. It's a conversation that I want you to become obsessed with. And yes, sometimes obsessing over our kids' health and obsessing over their sleep schedules and their nutrition and making sure they're getting chiropractic care and all the things that keep them healthy, it can be a burden on us. It can be quite a bit of stress on us. So make sure, and I'm going to really kick in, as I do with every one of these episodes, it's going to be really kid focused, but here's what's really cool about this one. This is your plan too. Sleep is essential for you as well. Okay, so what can throw off sleep? Actually, again, we're pretty dialed in with timing on this. We not only are always listening to our audience as to what they, community and tribe, what you guys are looking for, but this one will probably come out around another spring daylight savings switcheroo, right? So that's going to cause more sleep issues for folks. So what happens is our circadian rhythms can get thrown off. Our kids' circadian biological rhythms can get thrown off. What would throw that off? Well, there's a bunch of stuff that can happen physiologically within the nervous system, within the gut. I'll get to that next. But honestly, one of the things that throws circadian rhythms off is an inconsistent bedtime schedule. So we actually do have more control over this than we think, okay? And so I really went on a couple of personal rants there to set the tone to say, this is something we've known. We've known that the circadian rhythms that dictate sleep, they love consistency, and they despise, get really disrupted by inconsistency, okay? So if there's one thing that I really want you to hold the fort down with your kiddos, it is bedtime. I will not sit here on this podcast and say, oh, it's gonna be easy, and every kid's just gonna agree to this, and it is a chore. It is a challenge sometimes to really set up your life in a way where I'm gonna call it early. The word I actually wanna put out here on this podcast is to really lean into early bedtimes. But if you're picking up what I'm putting down, early bedtimes are actually what are called optimal, ideal, much needed bedtimes for kids. So stick to a consistent schedule. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ebb and flow. We're going to talk about something that would disrupt sleep and cause a sleep disorder or sleep challenge. And then we're immediately going to say, so here's how we handle it. Here's the solution. Second is sleep apnea or breathing disorders. So snoring, mouth breathing. Now, this is a whole episode I did with Dr. Bahar. We're going to bring on Dr. Maggie and others onto this incredible podcast as some of our airway dentist experts. When you have nervous system dysfunction, when you have what's called subluxation, especially of the upper cervical, the palate, the jaw, these are things I'll talk about a little more in a little bit. It'll actually disrupt respiration. When a child's nervous system is stuck in sympathetic dominance, when they're more wound up, they're more sympathetic dominant, they're more dysregulated, sympathetic dominance causes short, rapid breathing, okay? That is supposed to slow down at nighttime. It's supposed to be really efficient, really relaxed, and really optimized. And what happens for a lot of kiddos is because they struggle with this highly wound nervous system, their respiratory rate and their respiratory depth is disrupted as well. So snoring and mouth breathing and kind of restless, they used to, for a while, I'm sure it's still out there. however long ago, this is back when I still watched TV, so I remember this as a kid, restless leg syndrome was like a thing they created and then had medication. So you always know that there's a new medication when they market a new problem. Now, I'm not saying restless leg syndrome isn't a real issue. It's a sign of nervous system dysregulation, sympathetic dominance, and subluxation. Well, in a kid, let's call it restless kid syndrome, okay? You can tell that your child is not resting well. They're not getting into what's called deep REM, recharging, restorative sleep, if they're mouth breathing, snoring, and moving all the time. So what is the answer to that? Now, if it's already happening, there's something called nervous system memory, right? Kind of neuromuscular memory. The diaphragm is a muscle. So even for my kiddos, there's been periods where I can find their nervous system is a little extra juiced. They're not sleeping as easily, as relaxed. They're doing a little more mouth breathing. So you absolutely can use mouth taping, okay? So we'll include some links. It's really simple. This is one of those things. I know it doesn't sound very doctory of me to be like, Google it or YouTube it, but we're in this freaking awesome world where you can get access to these things on YouTube and on Google and find some really good, it's mouth taping. The reason I'm saying for this one especially, it's one of the simplest things ever. You have to retrain your system or your kiddo's system to be able to breathe through the nose, which is a more relaxing, optimizing way of breathing. Number 3, and I actually already got into this one. What we talked about there was sympathetic dominance and an overstressed nervous system. That is going to lead to high stress and anxiety. So ADHD kiddos, anxiety kiddos, sensory kiddos, autism kiddos, they struggle to get to sleep, fall asleep, and both. Why? Because the foundational underpinnings of their condition is a dysregulated, what's called dysautonomic. So the nervous system, autonomic balance, sleep is regulated by our autonomic nervous system. And the foundation of all of those conditions, ADHD, autism, anxiety, sensory overload, seizures, these are kids whose nervous systems are severely sympathetic dominant, and their vagus nerve, parasympathetic, which is our rest, sleep, relaxation, digestion, respiration, regulation side of the nervous system, is shut down. That's what dysregulation and dysautonomia mean. One of the very first functions, core important functions it will mess up is sleep. I have met very few of we have taken in tens of thousands of patients we could even just limit to those conditions with ADHD and autism and so forth. 95% of them struggle with sleep. And the reason they struggle with sleep is the same reason they struggle with other sort of things. Now, 4th on my list as to what will disrupt sleep is overstimulation prior to bedtime. Unfortunately, we are parenting in a time where I think it's pretty darn difficult. I don't know that there's any generation of parents that has ever come along or will come along that doesn't feel like their job is more difficult than it used to be. But if we really focus our attention here into screens, iPads, phones, Netflix, streaming services, they teach our kids through digital devices. And some of this is obviously necessary. They're going to grow up in the digital age. They're going to work a job or jobs, run a company, run companies that rely on technology. But it is designed to be addictive. I've done real quick on these things. I have done entire episodes. If you just found the podcast and I say autism and you want to learn more, or I say ADHD and anxiety and you want to learn more, and we talk about what's called the tech anxious generation, I did an entire podcast titled something around the anxious generation and the overuse of technology. But the first place that technology tends to mess up our kids' well-being is it overstimulates the sympathetic nervous system. It absolutely destroys their circadian rhythms if it's around bedtime. So does sugar, and so does activity. So the best bedtime doesn't just have a dedicated time at night. It has a dedicated minimum 30 minutes, really shoot for 60 to 120 minutes, so 1 to 2 hours of no screens, no sugar, and just total chill. Relaxation, reading books, total chill. Falling asleep is essential. So you got to have a process to make that happen. The nervous system plays a key role in all of this, but so do our habits. So does our lifestyle. So does our kind of process with that. All right. So we already kind of put a bunch of these out there, but I want to rip through these sequentially to say, this is what we do to get the most amount of sleep for our kids and family. This is our natural sleep remedies. I've got a list of 7 of them. I don't really see them necessarily as separate, like one is better than the other. We really deploy these and always have for our kiddos and always have had good sleep, good neurological health. And this is what we teach our parents and have for 17 years in practice, our patients and parents. And so this stuff really works. Number 1, I've talked about it the whole time here. Establish a bedtime routine and own it. Set your life up around sleep. If that sounds too much, if that sounds like, whoa, man, if I went on for another 2 hours and I could teach you even more brain-based science about how essential sleep is, you'd go, totally cool, makes perfect sense, we're in. So number 1, establish a bedtime routine. Number 2, optimize the sleep environment, okay? Make sure that the temperature's not too stuffy, not too funky. Really, I know kids, and again, this is all, when I put this list together, it's kind of this general optimized list. I know you're going to have to adapt based upon ages and kids and everything else, but I want you to have the whole list. You don't have to go 7 for 7. You don't have to be perfect on each of these sub-bullet points within them, but you want to put the bulk of this in play to have a really good success with sleep. So a cool, dark room, decluttered rooms. May sound like, you're like, well, this is actually nice. Is he telling me to make sure my kid's room is clean and then it'll help sleep? Do you know there's actually science behind that? That our mental, emotional, relaxation, regulation does better with cleanliness and organization. I didn't just put that in there to make my wife happy. She did not write that into my outline on this one because she knows I struggle with that. But cool, dark, decluttered rooms. So unless your kids, unless they've literally seen the boogeyman, keep working with them to, if you do have a nightlight, make it real subtle, real calm, real kind of hidden, but you want to have a lot of darkness. That is really helpful to deep REM sleep and that. Number 3, now you don't need to deploy this one, but it works pretty well. Some white noise. Now, white noise is that calming. Our sensory nervous system is very sensitive to obviously physical trauma, toxic trauma, and emotional trauma. But the other senses that come in are auditory, noise, and olfactory. So number 4 on the list is to use things like essential oils and diffusers. You can absolutely support the system there as well. So we are a pretty big fan in this family and with our patients of white noise machines. We take them with us on vacation. I can literally, like if we ever haven't forgot one, we use an app on our phone, okay? Or if we did forget one, we use an app on our phone. We don't necessarily travel with essential oils and diffusers, but you could, right? And I know some of you probably do. Biggest fan of that. So you can use the auditory system and the olfactory system, and you can create some calming, regulating sort of environment with that. So I'm actually going to put those 2 on the same line. So I'm adding one. I've got my list here down in front of me, and I still want to keep it to 7 because I said 7. So we're going to put those 2 together. All right. White noise, essential oils. So tap into the auditory and the olfactory system. Number 4, prior to, we want kids who sleep well. Let's have clean kids as well, okay? Let's have the well-rested, non-smelly kids, if we can. Just having fun with y'all, okay? So a warm bath ahead of bedtime is a great relaxation. Actually, the tactile calming of water is awesome, okay? Add some magnesium, throw some Epsom salts into it. It really works amazing. Number 5, we definitely hit this one already, didn't we? Did I lose track of my number? Anyways, next one up, limit screen time. If you are watching a family movie or you're doing something there, try and cut it out 30 to 60 minutes before bed, but at minimum, and yes, you can get these for your kids, get the blue light blocking glasses, okay? It's really, really important. Blue light screens, just the electronic buzz of them, the lights on them, they really disrupt our nervous system. They really throw off melatonin. They really, really mess things up. Number 6 on the list, chamomile tea, sleepy time tea, sleep-friendly foods like tart cherry juice. There is some adaptogen, different drinks that are out there that are really cool. We actually are practicing and parenting in a time that a lot of this is more common knowledge and there's some more access out there to it as well. So the opposite of these good drinks and foods would be, sugary drinks, stimulatory foods. So we don't want that. So we really want to have a healthy dinner, and then you can kind of wrap it up with tart cherry juice, chamomile tea. Lots of that happens here at the Ebel farmhouse. Okay. And then honestly, make sure during the day, number 7 is actually kind of like the one that doesn't necessarily happen during the 30 to 60 minutes around bedtime, but you want to make sure that during the day you have a lot of activity, that your kids are moving, that they are active, that they are burning off energy and stimulating what's called proprioception. If you have a day where, and again, sometimes weather makes this difficult, so you got to get creative. But if you have a day where all your kids did was sit in school and sit inside, and then they tried, so they didn't actually burn off any energy or recalibrate their nervous system at all through physical activity, which is essential to calming, regulating the brain, they're going to have a harder time falling asleep. You've experienced that. How many times have you worked a 12-hour day where you barely left your desk and you were just absolutely exhausted, but yet slept like crap? It's because you missed out on that movement and doing those things in that way. It's a big, big deal. Okay. So what if you've tried all this, rounding third base with this episode here? What if you tried all this and your kiddos still can't break free? Again, I know that I bet for a lot of you, you just went through that list and you went, I got it. We've got that list, and you might even have things on your list because there's more things, magnesiums, melatonin. Hopefully you don't have to. I'm not a big fan of melatonin, especially with kids. Melatonin can be quite addictive. And it may sound like as a natural health guy, I'm a big fan of magnesium, but actually we don't want to use any supplements every single day because they lose their potency over the course of time. So you may have just heard that list, been a little surprised that I didn't put the two, the M&M, homies that help with sleep on there because we don't want to. We don't want to have to rely on supplements like magnesium and melatonin for sleep. We don't want to have to rely on magnesium for digestion. We should have nervous system regulation in order to get healthy nervous system functions, which would be sleep. The brain is smart. It knows it's one of the most important ones. So if you've done all this, you've taken all the things and maybe then some that are on this list, and you still can't get your kiddo to fall asleep, stay asleep, get good sleep, and wake up rested the next day, it is a sign for sure of nervous system dysregulation and what's called subluxation. Now, I talk about these things a ton on this podcast, so I won't be as in-depth. If you want more in-depth conversations, what I'm about to leave for these last couple of minutes, we've got you. We've got a ton of podcasts that go even deeper into sympathetic dominance, dysautonomia, the vagus nerve, nervous system dysregulation. If this conversation about sleep sparks you on a deep dive to learn more about these neurological underpinnings that cause sleep disruption, this is the episode to get you there, and then there's more that will complete that journey. But here's what's up with subluxation and nervous system dysregulation. The very first thing subluxation does is it messes with what's called the sensory motor system. So when we have subluxation, we have sympathetic dominance, we have the vagus nerve and parasympathetic rest, relaxation, sleep side of the system shut down. The first thing it does is it will leave our kids with what we like to call busy body syndrome. Now, when they're awake, that's what your child with autism, stimming, moving, constantly doing. That's busy body syndrome. That's coming from nervous system dysregulation, sympathetic dominance, subluxation. ADHD kiddos need to constantly be moving, fidgeting, talking. So anxiety kiddos, constantly kind of on edge, constantly wound up. These are all signs of subluxation, and the first place it hits is motor muscle function. Now, I bring that into the sleep conversation because the motor system, the physical body during sleep, real, actual, deep regulating sleep, is completely calm and completely shut down. And ask yourself this right now. Even when your child is asleep, is their body still moving, twitching, kind of uncomfortable? And so restless leg syndrome, restless body syndrome, restless kid syndrome while sleeping, that's a sign of subluxation. You got to get them checked by a PX doc. One of the first things we can absolutely calm is this neurosensory storm, and it causes the first positive effect in like 80 to 85% of our cases. Infants, toddlers, grade schoolers, teenagers, and yes, you too, parents, is improvements in sleep. Nothing. Magnesium, you could literally house magnesium, or magnesium citrate, magnesium blah, blah, blah. I don't know, whichever one. You can take it all, snort it all. That's a bad joke. Have it all. And then douse it in melatonin chamomile tea. You could put Bose noise canceling, have white noise headphones on. You could sleep in a mattress that costs you a year's salary in a perfectly dark room. You could have done red light therapy and been in the sauna and meditated and did all the things. But if you are subluxated and your nervous system is dysregulated, you aren't sleeping. Even with the most ideal conditions, you get adjusted, you get sleeping. There, I said it. You knew it was building. You knew it was coming. I am a nervous system focused chiropractor. The very first thing that kicks in healing for the majority of our patients, no matter their age, no matter their condition, is getting adjusted. It's a freaking game changer. It's life transforming. So if your child's body is restless, they're subluxated, you need to get them adjusted. Number 2, digestion. This one's not gonna, so I give you the one that's a little bit easier to see as a parent. The second one, if it looks like your child's body is calm on the outside, but you can still tell they're like not sleeping, they're uncomfortable, they're a little funky. When we are asleep, digestive motility is supposed to shut down. Now, if a kid is subluxated, the first thing that gets disconnected is the gut-brain connection, motility, absorption, elimination. The neuro-gut, as we call it, becomes inefficient and dysfunctional. So when they're sleeping, it's still working because it didn't get its job done during the day. You ever stayed up late to get a work project done? That's what your kid's gut is doing. It doesn't shut down, so they don't get into sleep. So the second thing we see, and it actually comes back to the first thing and helps us sleep, we improve kids' gut function massively with adjustments, more so than probiotics and magnesium can even do. And the third thing is if their respiration, if they are battling to breathe, if they're breathing too rapid, breathing too shallow, breathing through their mouth instead of their nose, that can be improved through pediatric chiropractic, neurologically focused chiropractic. So when we improve nervous system regulation and we restore and recalibrate and reorganize what are called healthy nervous system patterns, neurophysiological patterns, the neuromotor system gets calmer. They sleep better. The neurogut works better, functions better, is quieter at night. They sleep better. The neurorespiratory and immune system gets better. The endocrine system, the adrenals, chill out. So neurologically focused chiropractic is often a last resort for a lot of kids and families who have struggled with sleep, and they've tried everything from melatonin to magnesium to all the other things on the list and then some. If you're there, but you haven't yet had chiropractic, that very, very likely is the magic unlock. It's not magic at all. One of my favorite Levi the Legend's mom, Megan, always says to me, she's like, can you just sleep soft? And she'll just be like, I need you to do your magic voodoo for this. I need you to do your magic voodoo for that. And then she's so cute. She's always like, I know it's not magic voodoo, and you can explain to me all the neuroscience. And I love when you do, but I just really need him to do this. And I'll be like, I got you, buddy. Here we go. Magic voodoo engaged. And here's the neuroscience that explains it's not voodoo at all. Okay? So we know how to reset, restore sleep. And it starts with our environment, our habits, our lifestyle, really kind of our natural remedies we went through before, and almost a system, if you will, and a framework for sleep. And if you feel like you've thrown the kitchen sink at that and you or your kiddo or all of the above still can't sleep, absolutely know you're not alone. Know that is totally, unfortunately, normal today in the world where we've all gone through the perfect storm. We all have a lot of high stress, sympathetic dominance, and nervous system dysregulation. And it could very well mean you need to get a high level of specialized chiropractic care, nervous system focused PX Docs chiropractic care to be able to reset these neurocircadian rhythms and the way the body works. And sleep will be, for the majority of you, the very first positive benefit. Easier falling asleep, easier staying asleep, and easier keeping to sleep. There's 2 kids that showed up in our practice just at the and I actually talked about them on one of the recent episodes, so you heard them, but they had tried everything. And these 2 toddlers barely slept 7 to 8 hours a night. And when that was the number of sleep they were getting, and it was completely challenging and unquality, and they were completely exhausted and emotional the next day. Within a matter of 1 to 2 days of getting adjusted, they switched and started to sleep 12 hours deep, not moving, not twitching, not uncomfortable, not having digestive issues. Their sleep turned on first, because that's how you heal the brain. That's how you heal the nervous system. If you want a magic, I'll just run that theme out. If you want a magic unlock to vastly improve sleep in your family, not only go through all of these incredible sleep habits and natural remedies, but also make sure you're getting nervous system focused chiropractic care on the regular, and make sure it's a high level, full dose, real, high-level, world-class chiropractic, and that's what PX Docs provide. Any other tips, questions, resources you need around sleep, you reach out to us and ask them. We have an incredible guide to sleep. If you listen to this and you're still with me at the end, you can go to the show notes and you can download our guide, and you can have a lot of the things we covered and probably a few more. It's me. I might have forgot a thing or two, bit of a raging bull over here. So go to the show notes, download our natural sleep guide. It's really, really helpful. So I think it's the very first guide we ever put out on the pxdocs.com website. And the other thing I'm always probably not very good at on this podcast is just continuing to ask for help sharing this. We all need to sleep more. We all need to de-stress more. We all just want to have more health, more vitality, more resiliency, more enjoyment with our kids and our family. And I don't know that any of that happens very well at all without sleep. So if there's one episode to share, make it this one. This cross-section is pretty much everything. You don't have to have a child with autism or ADHD, anxiety to have a child who doesn't sleep. And so get this episode out to any and all families that you know. And as always, thank you for listening. Please continue to download them when you're on Spotify and Apple. You can listen without downloading, but to be very granular with my request to help us save more kids, if you download it, that shows the podcast platforms that you're loving it and you're engaged in it, and then they show it to others. And to really, really, really reach more moms and dads and kids with this mission and message we have of hope, answers, and drug-free help, if you could leave a review, my goodness gracious, we would be eternally, seriously grateful for that. I really, really love to read those. I don't know what to say about them. They are so incredible. I love my job doing this so much. I love you each. I love kids, being healthy, being resilient. I love early bedtimes. Biggest fan of the world of it for everyone, and I want it for you. God bless, be well. See you on the next one.